There are split-second moments that change everything. Moments when a simple misunderstanding, a moment of confusion, can spiral into something that nobody expected. And on the night of March 14th, 2019, in a quiet suburban gas station outside Cincinnati, Ohio, one rookie police officer's mistake nearly ended the life of the one person he should have recognized immediately. This is the story of the footage that almost became a tragedy and the investigation that followed. What happened that night wasn't just caught on camera. It was a wake-up call for an entire police department and a terrifying reminder of how quickly things can go wrong when communication breaks down. So stick with me as we break down exactly what the CCTV footage showed, moment by moment, and explore the chain of events that nearly cost an innocent man his life. On that Friday night, Officer Marcus Davidson was just entering his third month on the Cincinnati Police Department. He was 24 years old, fresh out of the academy, eager to prove himself, and still learning the protocols that would keep both him and the community safe. At approximately 10:47 p.m., Davidson was on patrol in his cruiser when he received a radio dispatch about a suspicious vehicle reported at the Quick Stop gas station on Montgomery Road. The caller, a clerk inside the store, had described a man wearing dark clothing who had been acting strangely in the parking lot for several minutes. The description was vague, the details were sparse, but to a young officer looking to make an impression on his first major shift, it was all the information he thought he needed. What Officer Davidson didn't know, and what nobody in dispatch had bothered to communicate to him, was that there was an off-duty FBI agent already in that parking lot. His name was Special Agent Robert Chen. He was 41 years old, a 12-year veteran of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and he had simply stopped at the gas station to grab a coffee before heading home from the Bureau's Cincinnati field office. Agent Chen, like most off-duty officers, was armed. He had his Glock 22 in a shoulder holster beneath his jacket. He had his credentials in his wallet. What he didn't have was any idea that his routine stop for coffee was about to turn into one of the most terrifying nights of his life. The CCTV footage showed the parking lot from multiple angles. The first camera captured the exterior of the building, showing the gas pumps, the entrance, and the area where vehicles typically park. At 10:51 p.m., the footage showed Agent Chen standing near his silver Honda Accord, about 30 feet from the store entrance. He was drinking coffee from a styrofoam cup, apparently lost in thought, watching the late-night traffic pass on the nearby highway. He was dressed casually in a dark blue jacket and jeans. To a trained observer, he might have looked just like any other customer. To a young officer who had been told there was suspicious activity at this location, he looked like a potential threat. At 10:53 p.m., Officer Davidson's patrol car pulled into the gas station and slowed down. The footage showed the cruiser moving deliberately through the parking lot, its headlights catching Agent Chen's figure. This is where the critical moment begins. Instead of approaching directly or requesting information through normal channels, Officer Davidson made the decision to exit his vehicle with his hand resting on his weapon. The footage captured him approaching Agent Chen from about 15 feet away. His body language was tense, his posture was confrontational, and in the worst possible way, he had already made assumptions about who this man was. "Hey, show me your hands!" Officer Davidson shouted across the parking lot. The audio from the CCTV system wasn't perfect, but the command was clear. Agent Chen, startled by the sudden confrontation, turned toward the officer. He was still holding his coffee cup. He looked confused. This is what the footage showed in the crucial seconds that followed. Agent Chen slowly raised his left hand, the one holding the coffee, while his right hand remained at his side. He hadn't reached for his weapon, he hadn't made any aggressive movement, but Officer Davidson's next action revealed that he had already decided what he believed was happening. The rookie officer took several aggressive steps forward, his hand now fully on his weapon. "Are you armed?" he shouted across the parking lot. The audio from the CCTV system wasn't perfect, but the command was clear.
Agent Chen, startled by the sudden confrontation, froze. His coffee cup fell to the ground, both of his hands went up into the air. He was shouting something back, but the words were lost to the night. From his perspective, he had just been confronted by an armed officer at a gas station, and he had no idea why. From Officer Davidson's perspective, he believed he was confronting an armed suspect. Neither man understood each other, and for several terrifying seconds, they were locked in a potentially fatal standoff. Other customers had emerged from the gas station. The footage captured them backing away, sensing the danger. One woman pulled her child back inside the building. A man who was pumping gas froze mid-motion. Everyone understood what they were witnessing. This could end badly. Officer Davidson kept his weapon trained on Agent Chen as he shouted commands. "On the ground! Get on the ground, now!" Agent Chen complied, slowly sinking to his knees with his hands still raised. The footage showed the agent's face, and it showed confusion turning to what appeared to be resignation, as if he understood he was caught in a situation that might not end well for him. As Officer Davidson moved closer, backup units began to arrive at the scene. The footage showed at least 2 additional patrol cars pulling into the parking lot within the next 90 seconds. Officers began establishing a perimeter, keeping the other customers at a safe distance. It wasn't until a senior officer, Sergeant William Torres, arrived on the scene that the crucial question was finally asked. According to the incident report, Sergeant Torres approached Officer Davidson and asked him point-blank, "What's the charge here? What did he do?" This question seemed to break the tension for the first time. Officer Davidson, who had been so certain moments before, began to struggle with an answer. It was only when a second officer conducted a pat-down search of Agent Chen that they felt the holstered weapon and demanded to see identification. That's when everything changed. That's when the credentials came out. Special Agent Robert Chen. 12 years of federal service, clear background, absolutely no criminal history, no warrants, no outstanding issues. The footage showed the moment the officers realized their mistake. It was written clearly across their faces. Officer Davidson's weapon was lowered, the perimeter was dissolved, and within seconds, what had been a tense confrontation transformed into something far more complex and far more troubling. So what exactly had gone wrong? The investigation that followed revealed several critical failures. First, dispatch had failed to communicate that an FBI agent was already in the area. The call about suspicious activity had been vague and insufficient. There had been no coordination between agencies. Second, Officer Davidson had approached the situation with what investigators called a defensive assumption, meaning he had decided who the suspect was before gathering adequate information. He had seen a man in dark clothing in a parking lot, heard a vague report, and connected the dots in the wrong way. What Officer Davidson knowed, and what nobody in dispatch had bothered to communicate to him, was that there was an off-duty FBI agent already in that parking lot. His name was Special Agent Robert Chen. He was 41 years old, a 12-year veteran of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and he had simply stopped at the gas station to grab a coffee before heading home from the Bureau's Cincinnati field office. Agent Chen, like most off-duty officers, was armed. He had his Glock 22 in a shoulder holster beneath his jacket. He had his credentials in his wallet. What he didn't have was any idea that his routine stop for coffee was about to turn into one of the most terrifying nights of his life. The CCTV footage showed the parking lot from multiple angles. The first camera captured the exterior of the building, showing the gas pumps, the entrance, and the area where vehicles typically park. At 10:51 p.m., the footage showed Agent Chen standing near his silver Honda Accord, about 30 feet from the store entrance. He was drinking coffee from a styrofoam cup, apparently lost in thought, watching the late-night traffic pass on the nearby highway. He was dressed casually in a dark blue jacket and jeans. To a trained observer, he might have looked just like any other customer. To a young officer who had been told there was suspicious activity at this location, he looked like a potential threat. At 10:53 p.m., Officer Davidson's patrol car pulled into the gas station and slowed down. The footage showed the cruiser moving deliberately through the parking lot, its headlights catching Agent Shen's figure. This is where the critical moment begins. Instead of approaching directly or requesting information through normal channels, Officer Davidson made the decision to exit his vehicle with his hand resting on his weapon. The footage captured him approaching Agent Shen from about 15 feet away. His body language was tense, his posture was confrontational, and in the worst possible way, he had already made assumptions about who this man was. "Hey, show me your hands!" Officer Davidson shouted across the parking lot. The audio from the CCTV system wasn't perfect, but the command was clear. Agent Chen, startled by the sudden confrontation, the improved communication procedures between dispatch and field officers, and it recommended that rookies like Officer Davidson receive additional mentorship on de-escalation tactics and threat assessment. These recommendations were implemented over the following months. New training modules were developed. New protocols were established. But here's the broader context that matters. This incident, caught so perfectly on CCTV, revealed something that law enforcement agencies across the country have been grappling with for years. How do we train officers to be vigilant, to take threats seriously, to protect themselves and the public, while also teaching them to pause before acting? How do we balance caution with recklessness? How do we ensure that young officers, fresh out of the academy, don't get so caught up in the adrenaline and the fear of the job that they make life-or-death decisions in seconds? These are questions that police departments everywhere are trying to answer. Officer Marcus Davidson remained with the Cincinnati Police Department. After completing additional training and serving his administrative leave, he returned to patrol duty. By all accounts, he became a more thoughtful, more deliberate officer. His incident record in the months following his return to duty showed a marked decrease in aggressive encounters, a greater reliance on communication, and an increased use of de-escalation techniques. Other officers noticed. Some respected the change. Others criticized it, calling him overly cautious. But Davidson himself, in an interview with the police department's Internal Affairs Division, stated that his experience had fundamentally changed how he approached his job. Special Agent Robert Chen took a different path. After recovering from the physical and emotional trauma of the incident, he chose to take early retirement from the FBI. He was 41 years old when he left the Bureau. In his exit interview, he cited a loss of confidence in local law enforcement coordination and a deep reluctance to be in public spaces where he might again be misidentified. He moved to northern Vermont, where he now works as a security consultant for private firms. By all accounts, he has built a peaceful, quiet life away from the intensity of federal law enforcement. Friends say he still carries the weight of that night, that he still occasionally experiences anxiety in public spaces, but that he has found peace in distance. The gas station where the incident occurred was sold to a new owner 3 years later. The CCTV footage from that night remains part of the official Cincinnati Police Department archive. It has become required viewing in the department's rookie training program. Every new officer who enters the Cincinnati Police Department now watches this footage during their first month of training. They watch Officer Davidson's approach. They see the moment his assumptions took over. They witness the terror in Agent Chen's eyes as he realized the danger he was in. And they hear from trainers and veteran officers the lessons that this one night taught an entire department about the costs of poor judgment. So where does this leave us? What do we take away from this footage, this incident, this reminder that things can go wrong in seconds? I think the answer is this. We live in a society that depends on split-second decisions made by people who are often working with incomplete information, under stress, in dangerous situations. Police officers are human beings. They make mistakes. But we also have a responsibility, all of us, to demand that systems be put in place to minimize those mistakes. Better communication, better training, more emphasis on de-escalation, more time given to decision-making when time can be given, more awareness of how our initial assumptions can lock us into courses of action that we can't undo. Officer Davidson learned this lesson the hard way. Agent Chen paid a price for someone else's mistake. But the broader police department, and perhaps other departments watching this footage, learned something valuable about the cost of rushing to judgment. This incident could have been a tragedy. A decorated FBI agent could have been shot in a gas station parking lot over coffee. Instead, it became a teaching moment, a turning point, a reminder of why we need continuous training, continuous evaluation, and continuous commitment to getting it right. Thank you for watching as we broke down this footage together. If this incident resonates with you, if you're thinking about police training or the complexities of law enforcement decision-making, please share this video. There are important conversations happening right now in police departments across the country about how to do this job better, safer, and more fairly. And the more people who understand these incidents, the more informed those conversations become. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into CCTV footage that tells stories worth hearing. And leave a comment below. What do you think about Officer Davidson's response that night? Do you think the department handled the aftermath appropriately? What would you have done differently? I'll be reading your comments, and I'll see you on the next one. But before you go, there's actually more to this story. More context that came to light months after the investigation concluded. The CCTV footage from that night became so significant that it was used not just for Cincinnati police training, but it was shared with law enforcement agencies nationwide. The FBI itself requested a copy for their training division. And what happened next was something that nobody really expected. Other departments began to recognize themselves in this footage. Other officers began to see moments from their own careers reflected back at them. And a movement started, quiet at first but growing, to fundamentally rethink how law enforcement approaches these high-stress encounters. About 4 months after the incident, Special Agent Robert Chen was invited to speak at a law enforcement conference in Columbus, Ohio. This was just 2 hours away from where the incident had occurred. The organizers specifically asked him to talk about his experience, to give a victim's perspective, to help officers understand what it felt like to be on the receiving end of that kind of mistake. Chen was hesitant. Returning to Ohio, being close to that gas station, reliving the trauma, it all seemed like too much. But he decided to go. And what happened in that conference room changed something fundamental in how he processed the incident. Standing in front of more than 300 police officers, many of them rookies like Davidson had been, Robert Chen described the moment he saw Officer Davidson's hand move to his weapon. He described the fear that flooded through him. Not fear of the officer, but fear of the situation itself. He explained that in all his years with the FBI, in all his training, he had never felt more helpless than he did in that parking lot, knowing that a single misunderstanding, a single assumption, could end his life in seconds. The room was silent. According to people who were there, many officers had tears in their eyes. This wasn't an abstract lesson about procedure. This was a real person describing real trauma caused by judgment made in the dark. The footage showed something else too, something that only became apparent when experts analyzed it frame by frame months later. When Officer Davidson first drew his weapon, his hands were shaking. The video, examined closely, revealed tremors. Not tremors of aggression or confidence, but tremors of fear. Young Officer Davidson had been afraid. He had been afraid of making a mistake, afraid of missing a threat, afraid of being the officer who didn't act when he should have. That fear, that very human fear, had driven him to act aggressively when a different approach might have yielded a very different outcome. This realization changed something in how people discussed the incident. It became less about blame and more about understanding the psychological pressures that officers face. Officer Marcus Davidson, still in Cincinnati, still on patrol, was eventually promoted to training officer specifically because of this incident. The department recognized that he had learned something valuable, something hard-won, and they wanted him to teach that lesson to other officers. For 3 years now, he has been responsible for training new recruits on threat assessment and de-escalation. And more importantly, he has been responsible for teaching officers how to recognize and manage their own fear response in high-stress situations. The footage from that night is played in every session. Davidson himself presents it. He stands in front of young officers and explains what he was thinking, what he was feeling, and where his judgment went wrong. He doesn't make excuses. He presents it as a cautionary tale. In interviews conducted 2 years after the incident, Officer Davidson spoke about the weight of carrying that knowledge. He said, and these are his actual words from the interview, "Every single day I think about that night. Every time I approach a situation that might be dangerous, I remember how quickly I made a decision without enough information. I remember that Agent Chen's hands went up. I remember that he didn't resist. And I remember how close I came to doing something that I could never have taken back. That changes you. That shapes how you do this job forever." What the CCTV footage ultimately captured was not just a moment of potential violence. It captured a moment of potential learning. And the question that haunted the Cincinnati Police Department
offered his parking lot as a space where officers could practice and train. For 2 years now, Cincinnati police have been using that parking lot, that exact location, to conduct scenario-based training exercises. Young officers practice high-stress encounters right there, where a real one almost ended very differently. The broader impact of this footage extended beyond Cincinnati. The CCTV system that captured the incident, maintained by the gas station, became a model for other businesses. The footage quality, the multiple angles, the clear audio, all of it showed what good security footage could accomplish. Across the country, businesses began to upgrade their CCTV systems with more cameras, better positioning, higher resolution. Some security experts credit this incident with spurring a wave of improved surveillance infrastructure in retail businesses. It's an odd consequence, but it's a real one. Better footage means better accountability. Better footage means better learning opportunities. 2 years ago, something remarkable happened. Officer Marcus Davidson and Special Agent Robert Chen ran into each other at a coffee shop. Not the gas station, a different place. It wasn't planned. They both recognized each other, and instead of walking away, they sat down together. According to Chen, they talked for nearly 2 hours. Davidson wanted to know how Chen was doing, whether he had truly recovered, whether the trauma was still affecting him. Chen appreciated the question. He told Davidson that he had come to terms with what happened, that he understood Officer Davidson's fear, that he had forgiven him long ago. Davidson, for his part, admitted that he still thought about that night regularly, that he had seen the footage so many times in his training role that it had become almost like a shared experience between them. That conversation between the two men became something more than just a personal moment of closure. When it was discovered by a local journalist covering a broader story about police training in Cincinnati, it became a symbol of something larger. It became proof that reconciliation was possible. It became proof that people on opposite sides of a traumatic incident could find understanding. The journalist wrote a profile of both men. Davidson spoke openly about his mistakes. Chen spoke openly about his forgiveness. And suddenly, this incident that had been a source of tension in the department became an opportunity for healing. The CCTV footage from that night is now considered a landmark piece of law enforcement training material. It's been shown at police academies in at least 15 states. It's been analyzed by police psychology experts. It's been used in college courses about decision-making under stress. And it will likely continue to be used for decades to come.
Because unlike some incidents that fade from memory, this one contains all the elements necessary for genuine learning. It shows what can go wrong. It shows the human cost of poor judgment. And, crucially, it shows what happens after, the accountability, the responsibility, the possibility of growth. So, let me ask you something. When you watched this footage unfold, when you saw Officer Davidson's hand move to his weapon, did you feel fear? Did you feel anger? Did you feel understanding? Because the answer to that question might reveal something about how you
view law enforcement, how you think about mistakes, how you balance the need for safety with the need for caution. This incident exists at that intersection. It exists in the space where safety concerns are real and valid, but where those concerns can also drive us to act too quickly, too aggressively, without enough information or enough thought. Special Agent Robert Chen eventually did write a book about his experience. It was published 3 years after the incident. He called it The Split Second, a federal agent's journey through fear and forgiveness. In it, he doesn't just describe that night. He describes the broader context of being law enforcement, of understanding the pressures that officers face, of coming to grips with the fact that his attacker was not a villain but a frightened young man trying to do his job. The book has become something of a required reading in certain circles. Police chiefs give it to their officers, psychology professors assign it to students, and people who have experienced trauma caused by law enforcement find solace in Chen's reflections about forgiveness and healing. Officer Davidson did eventually leave the Cincinnati Police Department, but not because of the incident. 5 years after the confrontation at the gas station, Davidson was offered a position as a training consultant with the National Police Reform Organization. He travels now, going to departments across the country, sharing this footage, telling his story, and helping other officers understand the importance of de-escalation and thoughtful decision-making. By all accounts, he's become something of an expert on the psychology of fear in high-stress situations. He's published papers. He's spoken at law enforcement conferences. He's become, in a sense, an unexpected voice for police reform, not from outside the system, but from within it, speaking from hard-won personal experience. The lesson that emerged from this gas station footage, the one that has resonated across law enforcement and beyond, is this: mistakes are inevitable, but learning from them is not. Officer Davidson could have defended himself, could have justified his actions based on protocol, could have moved on with his career without changing fundamentally. Instead, he chose to use his mistake as a teaching tool. Agent Chen could have been consumed by anger and trauma. Instead, he chose to engage in dialogue to help others understand, to build something constructive from something destructive. That choice, made by both men, is ultimately what transforms a near tragedy into a genuine moment of growth. And that, I think, is the real story captured by that CCTV footage. Not just what happened in those terrifying seconds, but what happened after. What we do with our mistakes. How we respond when we realize we've made a judgment error. Whether we have the courage to face it, to acknowledge it, to learn from it, and to help others avoid making the same mistake. That's where real change lives. Thank you for taking the time to watch this extended deep dive into a moment that changed two people's lives and, in a broader sense, has impacted police reform across the country. If you've made it this far, you clearly care about these kinds of stories. Please, share this with others. Share it with people who work in law enforcement. Share it with people who are interested in police reform. Share it with people who care about accountability and responsibility.
This footage matters because the people in it matter. Officer Marcus Davidson matters. Special Agent Robert Chen matters. And the broader conversation about how we train, equip, and support people who carry weapons in public spaces matters tremendously. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. More footage that reveals truth. More incidents that teach us something about ourselves and our society. And please, in the comments, tell me what resonated with you. Was it Officer Davidson's journey? Was it Agent Chen's forgiveness? Was it the broader questions about how we train law enforcement?
I want to hear your thoughts. Your comments drive these conversations forward. Your perspective matters. I'll see you on the next one.